All right, folks, here we are with mid-level 1 in Excel Chapter 2. This one is all about payroll and deductions, and we get pretty deep into some formula stuff here. So you guys might find it a bit more challenging than Chapter 1. So I've got my sheet open, so step 1 is done, and we'll move right into step 2. So step 2 is our introduction to if functions. So they introduce a little bit of logic into our calculations. So what we're trying to do is calculate the regular pay and overtime pay for each individual as you go down the sheet, and figure out what that number is. So I'm going to start with regular pay. Start every formula with an equals and type if. So that gives me access to the if formula, and I'm going to do a open parentheses. So based on what we know about pay is that you don't get overtime until you go over 40 hours a week. So I want to figure out, my if statement is going to figure out for me whether this person worked more than 40 hours a week. So I'm going to click on the hours worked and say if hours worked are greater than 40, so that's my logical test there. Then I hit a comma and start typing in my formula for if the hours are more than 40, what do we do? And then comma, and then you type in the formula for what happens if that test is false. So if hours worked is greater than 40, we know this person is going to get paid 40 hours of work at their hourly wage as their regular pay. So I'm going to type in 40 hours because that would be the number. If they've worked more than 40, they're definitely getting 40 hours of regular pay, and multiply it by their hourly wage. Okay? So that's what happens if it is true. If it's false, that means their hours worked is less than 40. I'm just going to multiply their hours worked by their hourly wage. When you're done, close your parentheses and hit enter, and you should get $398. Next, we have to do overtime pay, which again needs another if statement. So I'm going to do equals if, opening parentheses. The logical test, I can use the same thing because I want to know if they've worked more than 40 hours. So I'm going to go D5, hours worked, greater than 40. Oop, 40. So if they've worked more than 40 hours, that means they're in overtime territory. So I need to figure out how many hours more than 40 have they worked. So I'm gonna do some parentheses here just to make sure the math works properly. And I'm gonna do hours worked minus 40. So that tells me how many hours in excess of 40 have they worked. Okay, so that'll calculate, in this case, that would be 8. Then I'm going to multiply that number by their hourly wage. However, as you may know, if you work overtime, you get paid time and a half. So I'm going to multiply that by 1.5, which accounts for, $9.95 time and a half times that by 1.5, you get to their rate. So that's what happens if they worked more than 40 hours. So I'm going to hit comma. My formula is good. And if they haven't worked more than 40 hours, they're not going to be entitled to any overtime pay. So I'm just going to type in a 0 for the value if false, and then close my formula off and hit enter. So you should get $119.40 there. So that is, and the instruction sheet gives you your check number so you know whether you've done it right. The last thing in cell G5, so that's this one, we need to calculate their gross pay. So that's the total. So I'm going to do equals regular pay plus overtime, hit enter, and you should get $517 and $40. So that's it for step 2. It was a rather chunky step. Next, we have to create a formula in H5 to calculate taxable pay. All right, so I'm going to start off with my equals, and it's telling us that we have to multiply the number of dependents in column B, so I can see that for Abram is 2, by the deduction per dependent, which is in B24, so that's down off the page right now, and then subtract that from the gross pay. Okay, so we're taking gross pay and removing the deduction for dependents. So I'm going to start by selecting my gross pay, and then I'm going to subtract the calculation we get for the deduction for dependents. So to make sure that works properly, I'm going to do a parentheses, click on the number of dependents, and I need to multiply that by our deduction by dependent, which is in B24 right here. Now, I know that I'm going to have to drag and fill this formula down later. And as I drag and fill it down, the number of dependents will slot down one by one as we go down. Gross pay will slot down one by one. And so would this. But if it goes down as I fill the formula, I'm going to be referencing sheet or cells that don't have anything in them. I want it to stick here. If I want it to stick there, I just click on my number, and right after you've clicked it, it'll work, and you hit F4. And when you hit F4, it adds dollar signs, one before the column reference, one before the row reference. And that means as I fill this down, this cell reference here will stick. It will not move. It'll always look at the 50 bucks. Okay? So I'm going to close my parentheses here and hit enter, and you get 417.40. So, and based on the instruction sheet, our check number worked. We are done step 3. Step 4, we're introducing a new type of formula called the Vlookup. We're going to use that in cell I5 to identify and calculate the federal withholding tax rate or tax, but we're going to use the Vlookup specifically to choose the tax rate that we need to apply. So I'm going to hit equals and put in Vlookup, open parentheses. And if I look at this table, so based on the taxable pay that you earn, your tax rate will change. So what I'm trying to look up is okay, this person made this much, what rate applies to them based on this table? So my lookup, you can see here, it's kind of overlapped a little bit. There we go. Vlookup, first you have to grab the value that you want to look up. Then you select the table that you want to look up your value in, which column from the table you want the result to return from, and then range lookup. This is a true false, whether you want to do approximate or exact matches. So first thing we want to do is we're trying to search for that. So I click that, hit a comma. We then want to choose our table. So do not choose the headings when you do that. So we want this table. And because I know that we are going to drag this down, our table reference will move down as we do this. So I'm going to do F4 again. And you'll see we've got dollar signs in front of all the references there. Comma. So we're looking up our value in the first column, but we want it to return the value in the second column. So this would be 1, this would be 2, so our column index number is 2. Okay? And then lastly, hit a comma to move. We don't want an exact match because chances are that people aren't going to be right on 250 or 450 or whatever. We want approximate match. So you can double click on this true, or you can type it in. Either one works. So I'm going to double click it and then close my parentheses. So all this did so far was pick out the rate. We actually have to apply the rate to the taxable pay. So we're going to multiply whatever rate pops out of here by that taxable pay. and we'll hit enter. So you should get $104.35. So that finishes up step 4. Step 5, we're going to calculate FICA. I don't know what that is. I assume it's an American thing. We're going to do it in cell J5 based on gross pay and the FICA rate, which is in B23. Okay, I can see that down in B23. It's 7.65%. So let's do that now. So we'll go into our cell, hit equals, and we're going to multiply. It says we're supposed to work off gross pay, so that's G5. And we're going to multiply that by the 7.65%. Again, as we fill down, the 7.65 would move, reference would move down. We want it to stick, so we hit F4. All right. So now I have that, and I can hit enter, and I get 39.58. And the next part of this was copy all formulas down their respective columns to row 16. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight the entire row and fill down all the way to 16. There we go. Got a bunch of stuff going on there. Perfect. We also, I missed one step. We also are supposed to calculate net pay. So net pay would be our gross pay minus our federal withholding tax minus the FICA stuff. And we get 373. I'll drag that one down as well. All right. So that's it for step 5. Step 6, with the range E5 to K16 selected. So E5, K16. So that's just all the area where we did formulas. We're going to use quick analysis tools to calculate total regular pay, overtime, gross, blah, blah, basically total all the columns that we just dealt with. So to get to quick analysis, you can click. So if you have it highlighted, this box will show up that you can click. And my face might overlap a bit, but you want to hit the totals category and sum. Okay. This one where it has the blue highlight lets you know where the sum is going. It's going at the bottom. That's where we want it. If you look at farther on the right, it's got a yellow on the side. The totals will go on that side. We don't want that. We want it at the bottom, so I will click that. And now we have totals for every column at the bottom, which is perfect. So there is a note for Mac users that in the Home tab in the editing group, you can hit the auto sum button. In Windows, that looks like this. It's probably similar to your Mac screen. All right, so that's step 6. Step 7, we're going to apply accounting number format to C5 to C16. So 5 to 16, accounting number format. And then accounting format to the first row of the monetary data. So that's this one. So accounting again. And then it also says to do it on the total row. Accounting. All right. Apply the comma style to the monetary values for the other employees. So everything not in the top row. So that means kind of everything in the middle there. So you can choose. So one way you can do it is just hit this comma style button here. Boom. Tidied it up. 2 decimal places. Perfect. And then the last thing we need to do is apply a style to our bottom row using the cell styles format called total. So I'm going to go to cell styles over here in the Home tab, and total is in the titles and headings area at the far right. I'll click that. And what it did is it put a double underline under and a single line at the top. And that is perfect. We're done. Step 7. Step 8, we're going to insert the appropriate functions to calculate average, highest, lowest values in the summary statistics area. So that's I21 to K23. So that's this area here. Format the number of hours calculations as number with 1 decimal, and the remaining is accounting. Okay, so it's telling us in these columns what we want to show. So we want to have average number of hours. So I'm going to equals, and this is a new formula, so you type in average, open your parentheses, and highlight the what you want to average. So we want average hours. I'm going to highlight that, close parentheses, and hit that. We want average gross pay, so average gross pay. Make sure not to highlight the total or else your number will get goofed up. And then average net pay. Perfect. I'll worry about number formats at the end. Next one, if you want to do the highest, you have to do max, M-A-X, highlight hours worked. Then we want gross pay. And then we want net pay. Then for lowest, you use the min formula, M-I-N, hours worked, gross pay, and net pay. All right, so to do the number format, we want to do number format with 1 decimal. So I'll just pick number, shrink the decimal by 1. And these guys look like they might already be in accounting. Yes, they are. So I don't need to change the number format there. So that's it for step 8. Step 9, insert a footer. All right, well, I'm going to do that by clicking on the page layout button, which is a shortcut to our footer. Scroll to the bottom of the page, and I can start clicking in there. So it wants my name on the left side. It wants the sheet code in the middle and the file name on the right. And then I can go back to my page layout. If it lets me, it's not letting me. So I will go to the view. Oh, it's because I was clicked in something. There we go. Now I can go to page layout, and that is done. And that's it. Good stuff. We are done mid-level 1 for Excel Chapter 2.